Welcome in to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Chris Welsh, and today we are looking at the definitive first round. How are we doing it? We're looking at the Fantasy Pros composite ADP for the first round, and I have joining me the flagship, Andrew Erickson, Derek Brown, both of you guys in my corner. We are going to be taking that ADP, their first round ADP, and then we're going to mash it up into a big old super ADP, and we're going to be breaking it all down today. Gentlemen, this is a little bit different, and that's the first caveat I want to give to everybody. This is not your necessarily, now for one of you it might be, this isn't necessarily your first round rank. This is how you view the first round. Correct, Erickson?
Yeah, because when you look at the first round, sometimes you're going to be a victim to ADP, and I also think that there is a kind of a layer of, okay, players going in 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, some ADPs will have those guys ranked inside round one. It depends on the format. This is format agnostic. So just kind of looking at round one and saying, all right, these are the most of the players that you should be looking at to draft somewhat in this order.
But DBro, in some cases, this is going to play out just like how your first 12 are going to look. And I think in your case, this is that same thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to mirror pretty closely to my ranks. And I know that, we're going to get into it, but a lot of differences from consensus. So don't get at me, ECR. I still love you, but there are some differences in how we're looking at the board, Erickson and myself, and how we're diagnosing these top 12 players and who we want to go for.
All right, so we're going to start this off here. We've got the Fantasy Pros composite first round. We're using half point PPR. I'm going to give you the names, and I'm actually going to make you each make a case for a player that you do not have at the top spot, which is Justin Jefferson on the composite list, followed by Christian McCaffrey at number 2, Jamar Chase at 3, Cooper Kupp at 4, Austin Eckler at 5, followed by Travis Kelce. There's our tight end sighting at 6, Tyreek Hill, Bijan Robinson, Stephon Diggs, and then the final 3, we've got Saquon Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, and AJ Brown. So that is the Fantasy Pros composite half-point PPR first round. So we are going to get into this here in just a second. But Mr. Andrew Erickson, I want you to make the case for Christian McCaffrey because he is not your number one. Make the case for Christian McCaffrey and why he can be the number one, not just running back, but the number one overall player on this composite list.
Well, guys, we know that Christian McCaffrey is no longer on the Carolina Panthers. He is now on the San Francisco 49ers. A much better offensive situation for Christian McCaffrey, who was traded mid-year last season to the 49ers from week 8 onward. What did he do after that? Oh, he scored more fantasy points per game than any other running back in fantasy football when you include the postseason. So it's a pretty large sample size of McCaffrey in the 49ers offense with a bunch of different quarterbacks, a bunch of different moving pieces between injuries to George Kittle, to Deebo Samuel. But in the end, McCaffrey was scoring nearly 20 fantasy points per game in half PPR, over 22 fantasy points per game in PPR. 22% target share led all running backs. So for me, we haven't seen McCaffrey not be productive in this 49ers offense. And with another offseason or one full offseason in this system, why are we fading McCaffrey? Like, why isn't he the number one ranked running back? I mean, so I agree here with the consensus with the ECR ranks having CMC up at number 1. And I'm really interested to hear what DBro has to say about ranking CMC so low.
Yeah, that is going to definitely be something. Well, okay, save it when we get in there, because when we get to DBro's rank, that's going to get us all kind of excited. I'm also very curious at who paid DBro at the running back position to not only put them so high, but Christian McCaffrey so low. So again, the tease here is that you both don't have Justin Jefferson as your number one, though he is on the composite. So that means, DBro, we're going to go to you. I want you to make the case for Justin Jefferson as the number one, because he is not your number one there or at wide receiver.
I mean, what else do we need to see? This is the brand new, prime of his career, Cooper Kupp for us. Justin Jefferson's going to be locked inside of an offense that's going to run at a top 10 pace, be top 5 in passing rate probably. A terrible defense that got even worse over the offseason. So they're not going to stop passing, guys. And I think Justin Jefferson also, we could see another ceiling. And I know that sounds crazy, but we could see another level to his game unlocked this year, because last year it was Adam Thielen. And we knew we were getting out of Adam Thielen, which was basically nothing at all. He wasn't drawing targets. He was terrible when he got targets. And this year, you got a full season of TJ Hawkinson. You also have Jordan Addison. And people say, well, yeah, more talent around him for the entirety of the season. Shouldn't that lower Jefferson? No. teams are not going to be able to bracket Jefferson like they did last year. They're not going to be able to sit here and put all that extra attention on Justin Jefferson when you have Hawkinson and you have Addison and other tertiary weapons like them adding Josh Oliver and running more 12 personnel. I think that this is going to open up some more things for Justin Jefferson this year, and we could see him even outpace what he did last year, as crazy as that sounds.
Let me ask you real quick, quick take from both of you on this. When you look at this composite, because this is not yours, what is the one thing that stood out to you when you were glancing at this? DBro, let's start with you. You don't have to go crazy into it, but when you look at this, what is the one thing, for good or bad, by the way, that stands out to you?
For me, it's not having probably Tyreek Hill maybe high enough. And the other thing that sticks out to me is, I mean, we'll get into it, guys, but I cannot draft Saquon Barkley in the first round right now. Like, I just cannot. And this is a myriad of, like, not only, we could talk about all the contract things and go off on a tangent on that, but also his efficiency on the back half of the season last year was frightening. So just looking and, glancing at this real quick, like, for me, I'm all in on Tyreek Hill, and I cannot put enough respect on Saquon's name to get him up into my first round. I just can't do it.
Erickson, what about you? When you look at this composite first round, what's the thing, good or bad, that stood out to you?
Yeah, I agree with DBro with Saquon Barkley. I don't think it's smart to take him in the first round because he shouldn't be valued as a first round pick based on his pending holdout, what's going to happen. His price is going to drop. So you shouldn't reach for him in the first round. If you want to scoop up Saquon Barkley, you want to get him at a value. Like, you should be getting him at a draft day value. But for me, it's probably Austin Eckler is probably too high at 5th overall.
Yeah,
look, he's a prime regression candidate. Like, he scored more touchdowns than any other player over the last 2 seasons. And this offense is going to change up a little bit with Kellen Moore coming in. They've talked about we need to ease up the touches with Austin Eckler. He's vocalized about that too. They've never had anyone else that could do it. So I think Josh Kelly actually has a role in this offense this year. I think you're going to take a step back from Eckler because he's just been at his peak the last 2 years. So I could see him potentially taking a step back. And then for me, actually, it's CeeDee Lamb at 11. What has CeeDee Lamb done to deserve to be a first round pick? Like, what did he do that was so amazing last year that's like, all right, now he's first round pick? Like, I don't like a lot of Dallas's offense this year. I don't like Dak. I don't like Lamb because I don't like Mike McCarthy calling plays. Like, sorry. I just don't like it. So for me, CeeDee Lamb over A.J. Brown. AJB, wide receiver 1 season. Come on, people. What are we doing?
Well, we are going to see exactly who you guys have for your first round, whether it is close to the ranks or not. But we want to first tell you guys about Fantrax, the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for dynasty, keeper, redraft, best ball, whatever it is. Let me actually tell you about something. What I've always loved about Fantrax. I love to mix it up when I'm getting into my fantasy leagues. And over the last couple of years, one of the best things we've done to kind of spice it up is start playing in guillotine leagues. The guillotine platform, if you've never played around with it, each week someone gets eliminated. All the players go into the player pool. It's super fun. Well, guess what? I could not find an easier place to do it than Fantrax because of how they are customizable. You can do anything under the sun. Dynasty, redraft, go and check them out today. Also, Fantrax free NFL Fantasy Football League Manager is the most customizable with features that are through and through. Coming from another service, Fantrax can easily import any of your current leagues and players and customize if needed. They are one of the trusted platforms that you could find since 2008. If there's anything lacking in your current fantasy league manager, Fantrax likely has it. Go and check them out today. Fantrax.com/fantasypros. Just use that URL, Fantrax.com/fantasypros. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Let's take a look at your guys' first round. Mr. Erickson, we are going to start with you. So why don't you list out who your top 12 is? Then I got a couple questions for you.
Number 1 is Jamar Chase. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Number 3, Cooper Kupp. Number 4, Christian McCaffrey. Number 5, Bijan Robinson. Number 6, Travis Kelce. Number 7, Nick Chubb. Number 8, Austin Eckler. Number 9, A.J. Brown. Number 10, Stephon Diggs. Number 11, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And number 12, Tyreek Hill.
All right, so the first question, we're going to start with you, Erickson, is who missed the cut? Who just missed the cut for you? Maybe there was someone that you were trying to fight to get in. So who do we got?
So I was contemplating with Garrett Wilson a little bit. As a player, I'd like to take a second-year leap with Aaron Rodgers. I also looked at Jonathan Taylor. It just seems so bizarre and weird to have him be the consensus 101 last year, and then he's not even in the first round anymore. And to me, it's just like, it seems awkward, but then at the same time, I'm like, man, like, I still got some question marks about that offense. How's that offensive line going to shake out? We have a brand new quarterback, brand new play caller. So yeah, so those were some guys that were kind of on the fringe that I was thinking about.
Now, this is going to be another little tease to having Jamar Chase at number 1. Maybe there's going to be someone else here that might have him as well. Do you want to give a little take to why Jamar Chase jumped over not just the wide receivers, but everybody as your number 1?
Because I think he has a chance to break Randy Moss's touchdown record. Like, I honestly think that he could score 24 touchdowns this year because he led the NFL in red zone targets per game last year. He had a higher target share than Justin Jefferson when he was healthy. He had a higher air yard share than Justin Jefferson. And Joe Burrow could throw for 50 touchdowns. So for me, I'm looking at who could have that insane touchdown year. And I love Kirk Cousins. Want to have a beer with that guy after watching the quarterback episode 1. But at the same time, Joe Burrow could throw for 50 touchdowns, like I said. So I think that Chase he could catch half of those. So I think that he actually has a higher ceiling than Justin Jefferson for that reason.
All right, so I got one more for you, then we're going to go to DBro on your list. But why do you hate Tyreek Hill? That's the only question that we can ask here is why. What did he do to you? Why do you hate Tyreek Hill at 12?
Well, he is in my first round. So
but you hate him.
There were bills that I did where he wasn't even in the top 12. And I was like, you know what? That doesn't make a lot of sense. I got to put him in my top 12. And a lot of it's just because I prefer the other wide receivers more. So I like A.J. Brown more than Tyreek Hill. I like Stephon Diggs. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown more than Tyreek Hill. And it's because we look at what Tyreek Hill did last year, 31% target share, over 3 yards per route run, video game numbers like that I just don't think are sustainable. Like, he's getting older every year. And why would we expect a player like Tyreek Hill? Yes, he's an elite athlete. He's an elite fantasy football wide receiver. But he has an elite second-year wide or a second number 2 wide receiver right behind him breathing down his neck, Jalen Waddle. Like, is Jalen Waddle's target share not going to increase from 22% from last year as a guy entering his 3rd season in his uber prime? Like, Tyreek Hill's not in his prime anymore. Like, from an age perspective, he's not. So I like Waddle more at his price versus Tyreek Hill at his price. It's kind of the way that I see Tyreek Hill's fantasy outlook in 2023.
DBro, why does Erickson hate Tyreek Hill? He just made all those points, but I still don't get it. Why does he hate Tyreek Hill?
I don't understand it, man. I mean, because the fact of it is, for me, I love Tyreek Hill. I can make a case to take him even like top 3 because he is getting older, but we haven't seen anything close to a fall off for him. And if anything, like, he didn't have much of a red zone role last year. That goes up if his touchdowns go up this year. But the yardage was insane. Like, Erickson's talking about, like, you know, maybe Jamar Chase breaks records.
How insane they were.
Is it
almost like he can't do it again? Weird.
I mean, well, it's kind of like, I mean, not, you know, we're going to bet on outliers and we're going to sit here and bet against, you know, players like Tyreek Hill that are unicorns. I'm not going to bet against that, considering the guy was he was averaging with Tua Tagovailoa the most receiving yards per game in the NFL, more than Justin Jefferson. Like, if Tua would have stayed healthy, we're talking about Tyreek was on pace to like get 1,900 yards. Maybe he gets to 2,000 receiving yards. I don't see anything over like just a year. Like, when we haven't seen any signs of slowdown, I think Tyreek Hill can score more touchdowns. The yardage is going to be there. I mean, I think it's insane. Like, I think Tyreek Hill could vie to be the wide receiver 1 overall if everything still hits like it did last year.
So when you're looking at,
couldn't I make those arguments for Jalen Waddle too, though? And he's cheaper. He goes in round 3. Like, Jalen Waddle is averaging over 100 receiving yards per game too with Tua Tagovailoa. So I mean, I'm just looking at the cost. Like, I can get a different Tyreek Hill player and Jalen Waddle. Like, I get the same upside in my opinion. So that's why I have Hill ranked where he is.
Similar upside, but Tyreek Hill still owns the deep targets, and Jalen Waddle was the underneath yak guy. So unless he's going to out target Tyreek by a sizable margin, or at least a decent bit, I still can't put Jalen Waddle to sit here and surpass Tyreek Hill.
Do you think maybe in like
looking at their
full PPR, this might adjust a tiny bit to where Erickson was going? Like, if you're going to have a lot of receptions on the inside for Waddle, that maybe Waddle moves up, Hill moves down just a tad bit in full PPR, or you just can't make the move?
I can't make the move because I still look at the touchdown expectations for Tyreek Hill and his big play ability. I think if one of these guys is going to religiously break ones off to the house, I still put it on Tyreek Hill.
Not Tyreek Hill, but if you had to pick one on this list of Erickson's, what do you dislike? What would be one that you would massively want to change, not named Tyreek Hill?
Well, can we just go ahead and just pop the jar off this, pop the top off of this pickle jar here? Can we just talk about CMC? Can we talk about why apparently I hate him? Look, I know I stand opposed to ECR consensus, the fantasy industry. That's fine. Like, last year, it's funny because I'm looked at as like the CMC hater, but last year, weren't we on this same exact show, Erickson? And we were fighting against Joey P, like, about like why we should be drafting CMC. So it's like, I don't hate CMC. I just think that there are factors inside of this San Francisco offense that we're all kind of glossing over, especially with the fact of Elijah Mitchell, if he is healthy, and well, sounds like he's going to be healthy to start the year. If he's healthy, he's going to get used. We saw that last year, and it took off the ceiling, the top for CMC. You look at the games where Mitchell was active. We saw Christian McCaffrey, and let me rewind this for a second here. When Christian McCaffrey was on the field for the 49ers in a full-time role without Mitchell, he had 62% of the carries, 65% of the red zone carries, and he was averaging almost 25 fantasy points per game. So yeah, like those are all amazing numbers. But with Elijah Mitchell on the field, Elijah Mitchell had just as many carries as Christian McCaffrey. Both of them had 36.3% of the carries. Elijah Mitchell actually got more of the red zone work. He had 40% of the red zone carries versus CMC's 37%. And Christian McCaffrey's fantasy points per game dropped from 24.9 points per game to 16.7. So while I still think that Christian McCaffrey is going to be the every down, like passing down guy, going to get checkdowns, he's going to be good for us. If even the median of those splits, Christian McCaffrey is an 18 point, 17 point fantasy points per game running back. That's not the RB1 overall. So, and as well as, do we want to just talk about the parity at that position? The last times that we've seen running backs repeat in terms of total points or fantasy points per game in back-to-back seasons was Todd Gurley 2 years in a row, Priest Holmes 2 years in a row. Outside of that, it doesn't happen. So if anything, we're like putting CMC just definitively like, oh, he's the RB1. I'm going to log out of ranks. Don't have to worry about those anymore because CMC is the guy. I could make a pushback, and it's really easy to, that if anything, we should be betting against a player to sit and reproduce overall number one at their respective positions, like taking Chase over Jefferson or like taking another running back over CMC, and not just like putting him into this chalk RB1 rank. To me, it's more ludicrous to expect him to repeat something like that than to bet against it.
The thing that's interesting about that the logic and all of that is, in that same bet, you're having to make a calculated move that the guys that you will push over have to be more valuable. And I don't think you're quite making the case that Christian McCaffrey is going to fail, but if he doesn't finish number one, taking him number one isn't still a failure. If he's got a floor of being the top 4 running back, I think you've created why you can still take him at that spot, where when you start to move other running backs above, you have to be right. You have to be right. But it's a much bigger discussion you can continuously have. And I'm also a 49ers fan, so I'm a big old stinky homer. I would also note that Eli Mitchell goes to the injury school of Rashad Penny. They go to the same injury school. So I'm not sure I'm going to buy anything. I'm not going to take any argument of Eli Mitchell being healthy as something that's going to take away from McCaffrey on that. We're going to look at DBro's ranks here in just a second, or his first round. But we want to first tell you guys about Game Time, because it is July. And we are so close to fantasy football. But while we wait for its return, there are still a ton of great events that are out there that you can attend. Baseball games, concerts, comedy shows, and the best way to get tickets to any of these is on Game Time, the fastest growing ticket app in the US. For last minute, amazing deals on tickets to see your favorite baseball team, band, comedian, go and download Game Time. Again, it's not just for sports. July means huge summer concerts, comedy shows all across the country, and Game Time has got those tickets. Download the Game Time app and redeem code FantasyPros for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app and enter FantasyPros for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out, have some fun this week. Even in Arizona, where I'm at, where it's like 120, you can download the Game Time app and enter promo code FantasyPros. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. DBro, you're on the hot seat now. Let's see what your first round looks like.
Well, to start this off, and we talked about it a few different times, I do have Jamar Chase above Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase is sitting at the top spot, number 1. I got Justin Jefferson, number 2. Travis Kelce, maybe a little bit aggressive, but I got him at number 3. Tyreek Hill, 4. Cooper Kupp is 5. The man, the myth, the legend, the going to be RB1 overall. Tony Pollard is number 6. Bijan Robinson is 7. Austin Eckler is 8. CMC, yes, apparently I hate the man, is number 9. To round out the rest of these guys, Nick Chubb is at 10. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 11. And AJ Brown, who carried a lot of people to titles last year, is rounding it out at 12.
All right, DBro, who missed the cut?
So for me, I'm right on the cusp with Stephon Diggs. With him, I can't put him in my first round. I know we talked about Barkley, but he's one of the other guys that, honestly, he just scares the bejesus out of me. And this is not like the off-field stuff with Josh Allen or what kind of drama is going on there in Buffalo. This just comes down to what we saw for Stephon Diggs and basically a tale of 2 seasons. And part of this we can, or at least I think consensus is trying to explain this away with Josh Allen's injury and just rolling Diggs right back into the first round. But for me, I think there's also a layer of this because Stephon Diggs is not 26, 27 years old. He is getting a little bit older, and I'm not telling you that Stephon Diggs is going to just be terrible this year, but we do have to take stock in what we saw the last season. First 9 games, 6 weeks with 100 receiving yards, had a 29% target share, 47% end zone target share, and 2.88 yards per route run. Those are all fantastic. But you marry that with the final 7 games of the season, and there's some fall off there. His target share dropped to 25%. He only managed 100-yard receiving game. His end zone target share dropped to 27%. And his yards per route run dwindled to 1.95. And that's not a terrible mark, but especially in a year where we're seeing more and more drafts pushing up wide receivers, depending on whatever platforms you're drafting on. And I think we're going to see this maybe not to as an exaggerated extent of some best ball formats, but even in home leagues, we're going to see wide receivers go a little bit earlier than maybe in previous years. Like with Diggs, I think we have to be more selective about these wide receivers that we are spending this capital, this equity. So, yeah, I'm going to draft A.J. Brown over Stephon Diggs. I'll draft Amon-Ra St. Brown over Stephon Diggs. And, I mean, Erickson was kind of laying out the same point for CeeDee Lamb. We need to be particular and picky about what wide receivers we are going to sit here and push our chips in on these first 12 picks. Hell, inside of the first 2 rounds.
Erickson, when we look at DBros, how much do you think Tony Pollard sent DBro via Venmo or PayPal off of that franchise tag to put him as high as he did? I don't want to put words in your mouth because my question is obviously going to be based around what do you disagree with here. But I kind of feel like I got to point you into Tony Pollard because you don't have Tony Pollard in the first. He's got Tony Pollard as the number 1 running back. So is this the most disagreeable first round on DBro's list for you?
I mean, I think so. Look, I get the upside case for Tony Pollard. You know, when he was kind of the featured back for the Cowboys last year when Zeke had missed a bunch of time, I mean, he was scoring up with McCaffrey. Like, he was first in half PPR points per game. He was averaging over 20 fantasy points per game in full PPR. He had a strong target share at 13%, 9th overall, averaging over 110 yards from scrimmage. So I get the case. Like, in a Austin Eckler mold, okay, this is how Tony Pollard can deliver, you know, an RB1 season. But it still comes down to usage when it comes to who's going to be the RB1 overall. And last year, during that stretch of games where Tony Pollard was outscoring basically everybody, he was still the RB7 in terms of expected points per game. He scored 10 touchdowns during that stretch. It really boosted his numbers. It was twice as many versus expectation. Like, Tony Pollard's known for ripping off these massive runs. Remember, he wasn't the goal line back for the team for a lot of the year because they were still using Zeke. Now, he could take over that role too. But again, I mentioned this when I talked about CeeDee Lamb. I don't trust Mike McCarthy in this offense. I think Dak's going to take a step back, and I think that's ultimately going to hurt this offense as a whole, and that's going to hold Tony Pollard back from becoming the number 1 running back in fantasy football. Look, 13% target share is really good for running back. Christian McCaffrey was at 22%. Like, that is elite. Tony Pollard has not shown an elite target share ceiling at the NFL level. And how is that going to change when you have a healthy Gallup? You have Lamb. You have Brandon Cooks. Like, people are talking about, oh, they added all these weapons for Dak. Okay, so then is Tony Pollard going to get more receptions than last year? Like, Probably not. Like, I don't see a scenario where they're going to scheme things up, especially with Mike McCarthy, Mr. Puppet Master, trying to call up plays where I just want to run the football. So for me, I get the appeal of Tony Pollard being a top 5 running back, but number 1 overall, like, nah, not for me.
It's an interesting case across the board. I will tell you, of all these lists, I made a super list. I took DBro's, I took Erickson's, I took the cumulative, and we made a little first round cumulative baby. And we're going to take a look at it here in just a second and see what we like and don't like out of it. But we know we got Jefferson as a cumulative first overall pick. We know both of these fine gentlemen have Jamar Chase as a first overall pick. Our friend Joe Dolan, who does he have as a first overall pick? And who is he not taking in the first round? Well, we're going to find out right now. We want to bring in Joe Dolan, owner and managing editor of Fantasy Points, to touch on the subject. So Joe, you're on the clock, 1-1, half PPR. Who's your primary target?
I'm just going to be boring, and I'm going to take Justin Jefferson. I think John Hansen at Fantasy Points is making an argument for Jamar Chase, but I'm just going to be boring and pick the guy who's proven as the best receiver in football. So that's the pick for me. I will throw it out there, though. This is a year where I don't really see a huge advantage to picking in any particular spot in the first round of a draft. I think it's a really balanced first round this year.
Now the question is, who are you not drafting in this first round? Maybe a late wide receiver or a running back, since it's kind of deep. Who is that player for you?
I think Davante Adams is probably the guy I'll avoid. Saquon Barkley right now with the contract situation is not a particularly fun pick to make in the first round. I think Saquon will end up playing this year, but I'll probably pivot to somebody like an A.J. Brown or certainly Bijan Robinson, who should be gone by the time Saquon comes off the board. But Davante Adams, I think I just have awful vibes on the Raiders right now. And when I draft a guy in the first round, I want to have a relatively good vibes about his situation. I do not have that with Davante Adams.
Our thanks goes out to Joe Dolan for that. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at FG_Dolan and check out his work over at fantasypoints.com. All right, here is my hybrid monster super rank first round baby. This is what this looks like, gentlemen. Number 1, you guys took it. Jamar Chase is our number 1 on our hybrid monster. Justin Jefferson came in at number 2. Cooper Kupp at 3. Christian McCaffrey, even though DBro fought me about it, came in at number 4. Travis Kelce at 5. Bijan at 6, Austin Eckler all the way down to 7, Tyreek Hill at 8, A.J. Brown at 9, 10, 11, 12 is Chubb, Diggs, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And how this ended up working as well is if a guy only had 1 spot, they fell. So Tony Pollard didn't make it on this list. If they were on only 2, they fell below the guys that showed up on all 3 of your lists. So who missed the cut on this? Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, CeeDee Lamb. Those were, between the 3 of you, the only 3 players that did not show up on this cumulative list. So Erickson, what do you like most about this board, and what would you change?
I think what I like most about this board is 3 wide receivers at the top and then a running back, and specifically pointing to Cooper Kupp at 3. I think that is correct. I think that we have the first 3 wide receivers nailed down personally, because when Kupp has been healthy the last 2 years, no one has scored more fantasy points than he has. So I understand that he's fallen because he got hurt last year, but everything that I've heard coming out with Rams regarding Cooper Kupp's health, Matthew Stafford's health, it's all positive. And I'm going to buy into that. Like, I feel the most comfortable going into drafts with a top 3 pick, because that means I get to get a stud wide receiver no matter what that I feel great about, that can be a real difference maker, especially in PPR. So when people ask me, hey, Erickson, what do you want to pick this year? 1, 2, or 3? Lay it on me.
Yeah, there you go. If you're doing a little KDS, 1, 2, or 3. DBro, same question. What do you like most about our monster board, and what would you change?
This is a beautiful baby. I just got to throw that out there. This is a beautiful baby. This is one that you get on Amazon. You order all the monogram things and stuff, and you go take a few laps around the park, not because you need the sunshine, you need to touch the grass, just to show off the baby. So for me, I love this, and I'll echo with Erickson. For me, I think having the wide receivers pushed up here, obviously, my CMC hate still holds true for this. I cannot put him inside of my top 5 players. The one thing I'll push back on him, though, is that Travis Kelce, I've got him at 103, and that's where I think we need to start making a case for Travis Kelce. And I understand like the mishmash of our 2 first rounds push him down a little bit, but I think that he should be getting more respect. Like, you look at not only the positional advantage that he provides, he's a top 5 wide receiver, but at the tight end position. I mean, really, if we're talking about, well, who's the RB1 overall? Is it CMC? Is it, does Bijan, can he overtake him this year? What does that all look like? Well, this kind of leads me back to, well, we need to have a wide receiver in the 3rd spot, or it needs to be Travis Kelce.
And there you go. That is going to do it for the all-encompassing first round, whether it is the cumulative one on Fantasy Pros, whether it is DBro's or Erickson's, and our hybrid monster baby. All of those things you can check out with all of the best fantasy tools in the industry over at Fantasy Pros. Go and check them out today. Make sure you're locked in. Also, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're notified every time we've got a video dropping here on the YouTube channel, because you do not want to miss it. For Erickson, DBro, I am Welsh. Thank you guys for hanging out, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. Bye, friends.